Happy New Year. It's New Year's Eve. And you know what? For me, Christmas lasts all through New Year's Day, basically, so I'm wearing the hat. Sorry, liberals. Final Fantasy IX is the most final fantasy in the series. And fans know what I'm talking about. This game is kind of a big finale. It came out in the year 2000, not long before the start of the PS2, and that whole new era beginning there. Turn of the century. Big deal. It is a jarring return to form, at least after playing the last few games. We are talking bringing everything back that you know from classic Final Fantasy, taking the sci-fi out of it just a little, and going back to a medieval, basic, simple, easygoing Final Fantasy. Something that fans have attached to harshly. A lot of people say this is their favorite game because even the creator himself, Sakaguchi, said that it is the culmination of everything he thought Final Fantasy would be. It is the one that closest matches his vision. Because 7 and 8 just went off the rails, so 9 just said, okay, let's take a step back. Let's just jump into a world and have fun. Does it do it successfully? Well, let's find out. So yes, I don't know if Sakaguchi thinks this is his favorite, but he does say it's the closest to his vision. And fittingly so, it is the last Sakaguchi game in the series, the thing that he started 12 years ago or so. The game itself is a celebration of the franchise with many references that we'll talk about too. It is like the start of the series referencing itself and understanding its own legacy, which is definitely a thing going forward. It's also the last exclusively composed game by Nobuo Uematsu, the legend. This is the last time. He composed games later, but he had help. He co-composed it with other people, and he cited that it was due to a lack of inspiration. I think he was just burnt out. So a lot of people, this is another reason why people cite this as the end of one thing, and then Final Fantasy became something else after this. It's a big deal. I personally like breaking down, I put my own arbitrary eras in this, and so we have the retro era, which starts with the original and ends with either 3 or Legend 2. And then we have the 2D Golden Era, starts with Legend 3, ends with 6. And then we have the 3D Golden Era, starts with 7, ends with 9. What's the era after this? I don't know. Edgy 2000s era? I'm very excited, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. So yes, as I said, it strips down the sci-fi and goes more traditional, medieval, non-realistic proportions, not tall, lanky characters, short, stout, cartoony, goofy looking. I gotta say, I don't like the character design in this one, just straight up. It's every time the main character, Zidane, Monkey Boy, shows up on screen, he just looks so doofy. His lip protrudes out, and he looks squashed in. Arms are bigger than his torso. Steiner's like a blockhead. He kind of looks like Kronk from Emperor's New Groove. He's a cool character. And then you got Quinoa, this goofy plush ball alien with, he's always got his tongue out. Why has he always got his tongue out? Why? His eyes are like a cross. Basically, I just think it kind of looks ugly. We don't usually talk about characters first. Let's do that. Zidane, thief boy, ragtag, lady lover. He's not like Cloud and Squall, which is a good thing. We were definitely getting a little too far in the emo territory for a bit, so this is a very outgoing antithesis of Squall almost. He is, every girl he comes up to, he's trying to hit on her, and he's that kind of guy. Then we have Steiner. He's an adult. He's the royal guard. He wants to protect the princess, and he thinks Zidane is a thief. Screw him, get him out of here. He's a peasant. Go away. He can't do anything right. Then you have the princess, who he's trying to protect, who's crushing on Zidane, and also she doesn't want to be a princess. She wants to go on adventures. She wants to do something with her life. That is the theme in this game, is people finding their identity. It's definitely a theme that's central to the plot and is actually resonant throughout the whole thing. It's a simpler story, and that's good because it handles that theme well. It doesn't do much else, but that's okay. Like 7 and 8 get super washed with all the stuff they try to cover and the ground they try to cover. And 9 is just, what do these people think about themselves and how do they change throughout the game? The last main character is Vivi, probably the most famous character from this game. One of the most famous Final Fantasy characters at all. He's interesting because, you know, he's obviously based off of the classic Black Mage look, which we've seen since the first game. It's an iconic design. But I've always wondered, like, I always thought that was just a guy in shadows. Like, he's a Black Mage, so he's mysterious. And the hat guards his identity. I've always wondered, like, what do they look like? Come on, 9 games, and what do they look like? And here we are in a 3D environment, we're able to see things better. And Vivi is still a darkness cloud thing. What is he? What is a Black Mage? I thought it was just a class. But it might be a species. And we'll talk about the story, too. There's a couple more characters that join your party, but I do consider them lesser. They're not really main. Like, you got Freya, Dragon Lady. She has a decent story going in the beginning, but then stops. Amaranth comes way later, and he's just a tough guy who's annoyed with Zidane. He's a stubborn guy who thinks that every fight needs to end in death, and then when Zidane beats him, he's like, why don't you kill me? So Zidane teaches him that's like, you don't need to die when you lose. Weird. Definitely one of the most underutilized characters. Then you have Eiko, small girl, who also crushes on Zidane, but Zidane's like, you are a child, so get away. Also, I didn't mention Vivi's 9 years old. He's a 9-year-old boy. Which also adds to his arc, which is, again, the thing that probably resonates most about this game with everybody is specifically Vivi's arc. That's the one thing everybody brings up when they talk about how great this is. One more character to mention. Sid, my boy Sid, is in the game again. Of course, you have a Sid update coming your way on the main line, of course. At this point, you gotta be ready for the Sid update. He's a bug. I think he cheated on his wife, so his wife turned him into a bug and left him. And he rules, he's a king. So definitely one of the highest prestige Sids that we've come across. He rules the kingdom as an oglop, which is like a cockroach, basically. The story, like I said, identity. Does Zidane really want to be a thief and live this life of robbing and cheating? Princess Garnet does not want to be a princess lover. She already knows that. How is she going to break free, but also live up to her responsibilities as she should? Vivi. I guess we should go into that. It's a little spoilery. You find it out at the beginning. It's like one of the inciting incidents. Vivi is a Black Mage. What are Black Mages? Well, I think in this universe, it's not just a class. It's not really a race either. Black Mages are created. They're synthetic, I think. Specifically, in the beginning, you come across a factory of Black Mages being created one by one, and they hunt you throughout the game. They're kind of one of the big enemies that are ordered to attack you, one of the henchmen fodder that you have to fight. And Vivi's one of them. So, why isn't he attacking you? Why does he seem to have free will? Is he really one of these guys? And if he's artificial, what does that mean? Does that change anything? And then you find out later, this might be spoilery. Let's not say that yet. Yeah, and each of these characters have specific abilities. No more customization. Well, not really. You can't swap characters having different things. Like 8 had full-on customizability, just like do whatever. But 9 returns to form. Steiner's a knight. He's the knight guy. He does knight things. He does cover-based attacks. He's super strong. Zidane's a thief. He's fast and he steals. Garnet's kind of a white mage. Vivi's a black mage. And there's nothing much you can do about changing that. But you can a little. Let's go into the battle system. The main draw, ability points. You may have played a mechanic like this in another game. Similar for me, I remember Kingdom Hearts did this, where you level up, you earn ability points, and you can spend the ability points to attach them by turning on, basically, on and off abilities, and you have to spend accordingly. So if you want a counter attack, you turn on counter, but then you spent those, so you can't afford something else maybe, and you have to balance it accordingly. That's really it. Certain characters are only allowed to learn certain things, so it's not full customizability. This is where I think we start to see some issue. You have to learn abilities. You don't just have them, but they also don't just come to you over time, like in Kingdom Hearts. In this game, it's equipment based. Remember equipment? Remember how 7 almost removed equipment and then 8 just did? No, 4 equipment slots in this one. We're back. So the equipment will give you an ability to unlock, and it'll be like 40 XP needed to level this up. And once you level up that while keeping the equipment equipped, you now have that ability in your roster to choose from. You don't just get it, you still have to spend the ability points, but that's how you get abilities to buy, basically. This was a little weird for me, to be honest, because it was, on one hand, nice to have equipment back. Equipment still gives you the stat boost. It still gives you an attribute like resists thunder or prevents mini or something like that. But let me ask you, are you equipping things because of the stats or the abilities? Well, long term, you want to learn as many abilities as possible. So basically, you are always choosing the equipment that gives you an ability. Only certain characters can equip certain things, like chainmail is only for the knight. But even the stuff you can equip, not all of them can teach you an ability that you can learn, and it'll be grayed out. So if you equip something and you're not leveling it up, it feels worthless to you, right? This might give me more stats. This is less good, but I'll learn a cool ability from it. Long term, I'm going to equip this one. So the customizability almost falls apart here because you're never really customizing. You're almost always optimizing. You take what you get and you see, oh, this will make me learn something, this won't. I'll pick this. And that's the entire experience of equipping items in this game. It felt a little dull. It felt like I was just doing what probably every other player does when they play through this game. I'm obviously going to choose the one that gives me the thing. It was boring. Kind of boring, must say. I feel like it would have been a lot more exciting if you could learn a lot more different abilities and you can get more equipment over time, but that doesn't happen. There's 8 characters or whatever. They all have their own different kinds of equipment. They can only equip so many things. Oh, I didn't mention trance. I should mention trance. So we had limits in 7. They changed the way limits work in 8. And now we don't have limits, we have trance. And I really don't know what this is. It just happens automatically over time. And it's way slow compared to limits. Trance is something that levels up slowly over time when you take damage in a battle. And it just happens automatically. You can't choose it. You can't save it up. It just happens. And it might happen at a bad time that it's useless to you. 8 out of 10 times maybe that'll happen. So your character transforms into a animal-like thing, and they're very strong now, and they have stronger attacks sometimes. Some characters don't when they trance. The whole trance thing was slow, dumb, and confusing. It just didn't do anything for me. I didn't understand why they were transforming, like lore-wise, that was never explained. And sometimes some characters like Zidane get super strong attacks. Other characters don't change really much at all. So, lame. And it's worth mentioning, we're back to 4 party members, not this 3 stuff that was in the last 2 games. Back to 4. I did like that a lot. That's one of many improvements I think this game brought. A lot of quality and life things that I was talking about, hoping for, asking for in the last 2 games. They also introduced the synthesis shop, which is a staple, I think, going forward. It's also in Kingdom Hearts, where you can have 2 equipment and you blend them together, spend money, and you get a nice weapon. Works the same as the other games, and it's very fun and rewarding because it feels like you got like a nice rare item that was super expensive. It's always fun when you get something like that. Let's go into quality of life stuff. There's actually a lot. Quick save. I don't know if this probably wasn't in PS1, but it is in the port and it's not in the other ports, where if you turn the game off and log back on, you're plopped right in whatever room you ended up in last. So it's like a quick save, and it doesn't tell you about this at all. I've just learned it over time. You can choose to load your save and actually go back to when you last saved, or you can just be there. And it's really convenient. Like you don't really have to worry about saving that much. Also, it does that when you lose to a boss, because you go to the main menu anyway. So when you do that, when you lose to a boss, it puts you right back there, and you can just fight the boss again instead of like walking through the cutscenes or whatever, or walking through a couple rooms and running into enemies. Nope. There are similar buffs, like cheating buffs that were in 7 and 8, like speed up the game, do 9999 damage with every attack, battle assist, which like heals you and everything, and then there's the classic no encounter rate, which was very nice. Gotta have those are great. Split casting is back. Oh my gosh, I didn't know how much I missed that. I actually didn't even use it for like half the game because I forgot, like, oh yeah, you can do that in Final Fantasy. Not in the last two. Even in 7, like you had to equip a materia in a linked slot to the magic spell that you wanted to split cast. And then only that spell works, only split casting, so you couldn't even do a single spell if you wanted to. It was like pointless, except for Cure, I guess. But it's good to have split cast back. What were the 2 things I asked for in 8? Let me choose my characters on the naming menu and stop having to choose in 3D. I got it. They gave it to me. The names are always there. It's so easy to just choose who you want. You don't have to look in the 3D environment. Thank God. Number 2, summons shortened. They did it. I cannot believe it. They did it. They finally did it. It's actually automatic. I don't know if there's an option to not have it happen, but you summon and there's the whole big animation. But then when you summon it again, I don't know if it's for the rest of the game, but it just does a short thing instead of playing the whole animation. That's great. Just wonderful. Just wonderful. I don't know if you can call this a quality of life improvement, but most of these games, once the story got bigger and bigger in these games, the party member situation was always weird. Like, the story would suffer if you can only take certain people with you, and if you could choose, then the story would suffer even more. All these games had to balance, like, okay, should we split them off into their own stories to see 2 things, or should we forget some characters? Do we let them choose? This game, you can choose at a certain point in the story, you can choose your characters. But for the purposes of the story, they just assume everyone's there. And it's like, what a genius solution. So I only have 4 people in my party, but if we're going to an area where a character is going to have a big revelation or something, they're just also there. They're considered to be there. I don't use them in battle, but they will show up in the story. It seems like, oh, but it doesn't really make sense. Yeah, but it lets the story actually go, so I think it's worth it. What a simple idea. I wish I thought of that. Just have them be there. They're just there. The overworld in this game, as soon as you step out, it's like a lower frame rate and it chugs and it's like, oh god, oh, I guess we're here. The least welcoming overworld in maybe the series. And I think the game knows that because the game very often transports you automatically. Like, for story purposes, we gotta go to this town now. Okay, let's go. Doo-doo-doo-doo. And now they're there. And you don't have to walk and you don't have to do anything yourself. Kind of a nice thing. But I can't help but think, like, yeah, but it's because the overworld kind of sucks. I don't really want to spend a lot of time there. Even when you unlock the airship, you can select on the map which town you want to go to, and you can just click it. And for the first time ever, we have a fast travel system in a Final Fantasy game. Kinda, though. Kinda. It doesn't just cut and you're there. It takes the ship and it goes in the direction and then moves. And you have to watch it. It's like, alright, yeah, you know, this is PS1 fast travel. We're getting there. We're figuring it out. It's the first time for everything. So those are basically all the good things that I really liked. And then everything else in this game is slow. This game is so incredibly slow. It's very slow. And it affects the gameplay a lot because it's still the active battle system, right? But 4 characters, PS1 slowness. It was probably even slower in the original. It just takes forever for things to happen. You know, you get into a battle, it's a black screen for a bit. Then you choose an attack, and you have to choose the other 3 attacks, and the enemies have to attack, and they're probably going to do it more than once. Then the character that you chose first will finally attack, and it'll take like a full minute to get to that input. And by that point in the battle, your strategy might change. It's like a legitimate issue. There's this one status effect they added, which is like so annoying and ridiculous. It's called heat. And when you become heated, the gimmick is that if you do an action, any action at all, you die. That's what heat is. You just die upon using an action. So you're supposed to be like, okay, I guess this guy's to hold back. It's like you lose a turn, basically. That's the concept. But it could be like 40 seconds after I had given an order to one of the guys, and then the enemy causes him to have heat. I can't do anything about that. Once you input a command, that's going to happen. And so many times, my character dies from heat because of that. It's so annoying. There's also Doom. You know Doom, when a counter appears over your character's head, like 10 seconds, and it goes to 0. If it hits 0 before you can do something, character dies. That's been in the game, I think, since the beginning. But it counts real time, even though you have all 4 commands already set. That's usually when time kind of freezes and just the stack of commands starts flowing before the meter can start again. But Doom, that's irrelevant. It just counts down from 10, I think. I mean, I've seen it pause a few times, but I don't know what the rules are. The point is, I'll like not even have enough time to even command one character to do anything before Doom kills my guy. So Doom is essentially instant death for me because like there's no way to stop it. Even if I had a character ready, oh, that one just got Doom. Okay, so let's use something to stop that. Could tell him to do the thing to stop Doom. It won't happen in time for that 10 seconds. It's just so slow. And the battle system isn't the only thing that's slow. Everything in general takes long. Like I said, the frame rate and the loading drops in the overworld. And this is a port. This is like a remastered version, like 7 and 8. Couldn't figure out how to make it load faster? I don't know. The other ones did, right? They added another status called virus. And this is just uncalled for. It doesn't poison you. It doesn't make you lose magic or anything. It prevents you from getting XP and ability points. What kind of status effect is that? Why? Why would you put that in the game? Your character just won't level up, won't get stronger, and therefore long term will suffer for the rest of the game if you don't cure that immediately. Why would you put that in the game? What does that add? I really despise when a game goes out of its way to just be like, we're not making the game challenging, we're just making it like take longer for you. Have a virus. And story-wise, you know, it's pretty good. The writing is good, solid. It's not so over the top. It's not so corny. It's definitely a little corny. I mean, this series is always corny. My thing with this game is that I tend to go through a cycle with all of these games. Pretty much every experience has been relatively the same in different ways. I start out, I'm a little overwhelmed because it's a whole new thing and I have to relearn everything. What's new, what's old. And then maybe like halfway through, I get to a point where either the story kicks off or the gameplay loop, feedback loop like comes around and I'm really starting to get it. Oh, I'm really into this battle system. And then I become really hooked on the game and I just want to keep playing it. And sometimes that lasts through to the end. Sometimes I'm like ready for it to be over by the end. With 9, I started it and was like, oh, this is okay. And then by the end of it, I was like, oh, yeah, that was okay. There were never really many peaks and valleys, except the slowness was kind of annoying. And that main reason is why I don't consider this that great. I didn't like this game as much as 7 or 8, or a lot of the other ones, to be honest. And this is an important game. This is something that, it's like the OG Final Fantasy fans. 7 is the most popular, but 9's the true. That's the one. I always look up reviews before this, just to like get, what's the reception of this one generally? And I was surprised to learn 8 was very divisive, but but it made sense when you thought about it. 9 is just beloved, just adored through and through. And it's one of the reasons it's marked as before the series went crazy, went off, became big, became about the technical spectacle, and less about the experience. And I can't say if that's true or not because I haven't played anything after this. But that kind of makes me excited because it seems like there's two ballparks. There's people who like traditional, which kind of ends here. There's not really many games that follow this type of gameplay. Then there's people who like the sci-fi. 7, 8. From what I understand, 10. I think I'm more of this. The latter, I'm more of the sci-fi crazy nonsense type of guy. But we'll have to see. Speaking of dumb and annoying things. Oh. Did you know there's cards in this one too? Triple Triad's a pretty famous thing from 8. They tried to outdo it. Triple Triad, now Tetra Master. It's not 3x3, it's 4x4. And cards have diagonal arrows to go to. Interesting concept. Terrible execution. Horrible execution. This game is stupid, luck-based, nothing. And it's not fun. And it's almost entirely optional. 8, it was optional in 8, but it really felt blended into the story. This one does not at all feel necessary. It feels totally tacked on. It feels like it's trying to run off the tailwind of 8. I don't need to explain it. I can't really explain it aside from you can have diagonal arrows this time. There's also a stat-based part of it. Like there's these letters under the cards. There's like 4 slots. Some of them are letters, some of them are numbers. And there's a tutorial explaining to you how the game works. And then it gets to that part where it starts saying, what are these numbers? What are these letters? And it says, well, you're just going to have to figure that one out. How though? I played this whole game. As far as I know, there's no way to figure that out. There's nothing that tells you. You're just supposed to, I don't know. I genuinely don't know. How are you supposed to know? Why did the game hide that information for no reason? This game is basically unplayable without luck because you don't know what you're doing. You don't know. There's no way to tell you. And afterwards I looked up a video and apparently, P stands for physical, M stands for magic. And the slot after that is stats, and then the slot after that is the other thing. And then you have health, which is a hidden stat. And then there's when the two arrows fight, like collide, then a fight occurs. And it's based off the magic and the physical stat, and whatever one you use and whatever one he defends is. And then you have health, which you don't see. And whoever has the less health after the battle becomes blue or red, depending on the player. What is this? Why did they do that? Why did they do any of this? All I had was questions about Tetra Master. And it is optional. I fought a few people throughout the game. Eventually I did stop because I was like, this is stupid. I am wasting time. I spent a long time playing Triple Triad in 8, and it didn't really amount to much. And I really wasn't enjoying Tetra Master, so I just stopped. There is a point in the story that makes you do it though. And if you haven't collected cards from other enemies, you're gonna have a bad time in that section. I don't know what you do if you don't have cards and you've been ignoring it because you should ignore it because it's pointless. Just failed on the Tetra Master front. Just bad. Overall, my experience with this game was just okay. Like, the bad things weighed it down. The good things I don't think did enough to really elevate it for me. I'll talk about that later, but let's talk about spoilers. Just real quick. Like I said, this game is a celebration of Final Fantasy that came before it. It's self-referential for like the first time. It takes place in the world of Gaia, which you might know, that's the world of 7, and one of the towns from the first game, I think. Terra is a world that's mentioned, I won't get into it, but, I mean, Terra makes sense for a name of a planet, but you can't not connect that the main character of 6 was named Terra. You run into a bad guy at some point. You know, classic Final Fantasy, the bad guys keep switching. I'm not actually the bad guy, this guy is. I'm not actually the bad guy, this guy is. You eventually run into Garland. That's right. That was the first time I was like, oh my gosh, it's Garland. It's Garland. Garland update. You know the guy from the first game, and maybe you know him from the trailer for Stranger of Paradise. He's back. I mean, it's not him. It's not actually like the one from the first game, but I kind of like to think it is because it's fun that way. He's there to awaken, you guessed it, chaos. And it starts really calling back in that last act. And running around in the final world, you run into Serpent Lady with swords, and you're like, she's familiar. What is she? I remember her. And you run into a Kraken, you run into a three-headed dragon, you're like, these are the Guardians of Chaos from Final Fantasy 1. And it runs through all four of those guys. And then the final boss comes in. It's like he was trying to awaken chaos, and there's all these themes of going back and where things come from and identity. Crystals, obviously, were very important for Final Fantasy for a long time until like 6. There were really no crystals in 6, 7, or 8. Crystal is the cover of this game, and you're like, whoa, where is that? And the crystal doesn't really come into play until later. It's not like 6 crystals of the earth or whatever. It's one big crystal. And you see it at the end, and you realize that this is the birthplace of everything, and everything comes from this crystal. Everything that ever was comes from the crystal, and the bad guy is trying to unite everybody into souls of the same being so we can live a perfect life. He has this strange Gendo Ikari vision of what life should be. And the big crystal, I mean, it has to harken back to the original games with the crystal collecting and everything. I liked that a lot. That was really fun and cool. And feels like a finale to the franchise. Like, I know these games aren't connected, but this one really felt like it in the end there. It almost like the first crystal started it all and broke off into these loops. And the party in the first game closed the loop once. And it's now your job to stop the chaos again. Really cool. But overall, man, this was a very okay game. It's just okay. And I looked up, like I said, I looked up reviews. And a lot of people love it. And a lot of the reviews say, like, sure, maybe Final Fantasy IX is not the best in terms of gameplay. Maybe it's not the best with the music. Maybe it's not the best with the way the emotions hit you. But it's still the best one. And I'm like, can you explain why? Because you just listed reasons as to why it's not. If the other games do all those things better, I like those better. I don't know, this game, the VV story plotline, I get it, it's emotional. I didn't connect with the characters as much as I did in even 7 or 8. And people talk about how this one's way more personalized and less sci-fi scary. But just because it was sci-fi crazy doesn't mean there was no emotional attachment. I cared about the characters of 7 and 8 more than 9. And 9 was way more of a personal story. It wasn't about identity. But like, I mean, just look at the covers. The emblem of 8 is 2 characters embracing each other. It's like the most personal logo they've ever had. And what's the logo for 9? Big ass crystal. I don't want to rain on everyone's parade. I just feel like, in the grand scheme of things, this is such an important one. This is such a finale. This is the end of the year. This is the New Year's Eve of Final Fantasy. But looking at it as just a game, it's not that great. It's okay. It's just okay. And that's alright. We all have our opinions. I just wonder if all those people who just think this is a 10 out of 10, I'm just like, geez, dude, when was the last time you played it? Was this a childhood nostalgia thing or what? Or are you just hooked to the story, the ending of Sakaguchi's tale? I don't know. Oh, one last thing. When you beat the game, you know what I should show you? When you beat the game, guess what you unlock? Blackjack. You unlock Blackjack. You just play it on the menu. You don't use your in-game gil. You just start with like a certain amount of money. And then, okay, I have a king and a 3. Shit, I'm gonna hit. I got 15. All right, I'm gonna stand. I lost because you got perfect 21. Blackjack. It's a better card game than Tetra Master. All right, so we're at the end, man. This is the end of the golden era, the 3D golden era, and the start of a new beginning. I don't know what to call this next era. Maybe I'll figure it out as I go. Yeah, things are getting weird from here on out. I'm actually glad I didn't get much of a break between these PS1 games. I like the spin-offs because it's like a break. But then you had 7, and between 8 and 7 was Tactics, which was not a break because that was stressful. And then there's nothing between 8 and 9, so we're about to have some nice spin-off time before we go into the big PS2 game, Final Fantasy X, where things change forever. So count down the new year. Oh look, they're counting down the ball right now. See you in 2022. Who are you? Where is it? I'm you from the future. I completed every Final Fantasy except one. You forgot one. I did not forget a game. I was very careful. I went through the wikis. I did the charts. I checked them all off. I went one by one. You forgot one. And I'm here to change that. My plan is to hand deliver this version of Final Fantasy VI directly to you in the past, and then take your place after that review and finish the one that you missed. That's what I'm gonna do. You can't stop me. Alright. Well, good luck, I guess. Wait, before you go. The MMOs. You played them. You played all of the games. Were the MMOs painful? Or... shit.